I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Could I please confirm that with Ms. Brock?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda for today.
So moved.
All right.
I'll second that.
All right, I had a motion by Chairman Joe Passman and a second by Vice Chairman Larry. All in favor? Your name left me.
I got it.
He beat you to it. Okay. All right. Now I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from August 14th, 2023.
I'll make the motion. I read them.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. Ms. Brown? Motion was made by Ms. Tabernick and second by Ms. Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have several citizen comment period. And one person who signed up is not here yet. And I would remind everyone, every member of the public who is recognized to speak shall limit comments to 3 minutes and observe the following protocol. Address the chairman and in speaking avoid disrespect to council and any personalities. Confine themselves to questions under the jurisdiction of council. Be mindful and respectful of those who are present and others who may be watching on television. The first person that signed up, I understand, was signed up by someone else, and she is not here yet. So we will start with the second person on the list. Is it Derek? Derek, and your last name? Statter. Okay, if you can say your name for the record and your address, and remember there are 3 minutes.
Certainly. My name is Derek Stetter. My wife and I own property at 169 Cherry Point Road. I'm here to comment on, not to recommend the approval of the rezoning request for the 71.54 acres located at 1691 Okatee Highway. I've been to 2 planning board meetings, which were very educational for me. However, the infrastructure for this proposed community is not there yet. The streets are overtaxed, the schools are overtaxed, and the rezoning request requires, I believe, a minimum either of 150 or 170 acres. There's only 71 acres on site. So I'm completely floored that the Beaufort County Planning Department continues to recommend approval for this project. They want to put 419 dwelling units in 71 acres. That doesn't include roadways or any circulation in that area, or even commercial up front, which is completely unreasonable, completely unreasonable. So I'm not sure why we continue to have to go through these circles. And I don't, for the life of me, can't understand why the planning department continues to recommend this approval. So I urge you all to not approve this. In my opinion, it's a disservice to the community, it's a disservice to the schools, and it's going to continue to cause problems down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. All right, next on the list is Mr. Chuck Newton. And if you'll state your name and where you live for the record.
I'm Chuck Newton. I'm chairman of the Sea Island Corridor Coalition. I'm a resident of Dawtaw Island, in between Ladies Island and St. Helena. Close enough. I appreciate the committee's interest in reviewing this lack of progress in implementing the Ladies Island plan, which the county council unanimously approved and adopted way back in 2019. It predates most of the people here on this particular council. The plan and the subsequent work required to make this plan actionable has been bounced around for 4 years. Despite our best efforts and the efforts of full cooperation of many of those who served on the original steering committee, it has not moved forward. During this period, administrators took the position that A, we already have a plan, B, we don't need a more detailed plan, and C, we can do it ourselves. Well, despite the name, the Ladies Island Plan is not a master plan. It is a vision document and was dictated with that particular moniker when the council originally allocated plans for the project. As to whether we need a more detailed plan, I think is unarguable. All along the Sea Island Parkway, we have patchwork zoning. T4N next to T5 urban corridor, City of Beaufort property next to Beaufort County property. Contradictory zoning on building height and permitted densities. If any place needed a true master plan, Ladies Island is it. As to whether, lastly, we were told we could do it ourselves. Our view is that county planning, despite a well-qualified staff, does not possess the requisite skills nor the available time to produce a full master plan. We can do it ourselves has been just another in a long line of stalling tactics. Our view is that the decision on whether or not Ladies Island development should be guided by a carefully thought-out master plan is a policy decision to be made by council, not a determination by staff. I would point out that today's review by the committee represents the first time any component of the council has considered the Ladies Island plan since it was unanimously adopted back in 2019. That said, we're far beyond any need to look at the history of Ladies Island plan. That's looking backwards. What's needed is an objective and a responsible analysis of growth and development on Ladies Island, and a decision by the council to help deal with it. It's going to require some funds, but way short of $1 million. The Ladies Island plan we have in hand provides a good foundation, and we will not have to pay for it again. And you will have a partner. City of Beaufort is willing to participate meaningfully in financing a comprehensive plan for the island. All that remains is that for this council to make Ladies Island more of a priority and less, and decide to move forward on the town center master plan. It's a decision that's way overdue and way too important to continue to ignore. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Next on the list is Scotty Daniel, who will speak on item number 10. And if you'll state your address and your name, please, for the
Yes,
record.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. My name is Scotty Daniel, 165 Cherry Point Road. I'm here to speak about the rezoning of the 71 acres on Cherry Point Road. This was voted down in August by the Planning Commission in a vote of 5-2. It wasn't even close. This vote took place after two separate meetings because at the end of the first meeting, the developer requested a continuance. During these meetings, the applicants, community members, the school system, and environmental groups were all present. Everybody aired their viewpoint. Many questions were asked and answered. The Planning Commission fully considered the property overlay and the comprehensive plan before soundly voting this down. Some of their issues were the impact on schools. We already have a school system that's busting at the seams. We're looking to add 440 more units in a 70-acre area, some of which doesn't even include the housing for these. This is on top of the other developments that are already under construction in close proximity. And when those come online, that's something we can't stop, but we can stop this. And by their own admission, the people who sought this rezoning say they don't have to adhere to the plan that they presented to us. They could put a hotel in there once this is passed, just as long as it meets certain standards. What they showed us in the drawings doesn't have to be what they actually do. My wife has had conversations with the Beaufort Jasper Water, and they said that they're struggling to meet the current demands. They're not even going to be fully online until 2025 to try and meet the demands of this area. Secondly, in order for me to get up here and speak today, I had to provide my name and address. Yet throughout this process, nobody knows who this developer is. They're represented by an attorney, and we don't know who's backing this, where the money's coming from, and I don't see how that's allowable. I have to identify to present, yet they've been through two separate planning commissions meetings, and nobody knows who they are. And it's my understanding that this property hasn't even been bought yet. that they're seeking this before they even own the property. And lastly, I'd like to commend your staff. You've got a wonderful staff over there. They've been extremely helpful, very cordial, and they represent the county beautifully. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next on the list is Bonnie Kristolik. Am I pronouncing that right? Okay. And you're going to speak on item number 8, correct? Okay. Please state your name and address.
My name is Bonnie Kristalik. I'm a resident of Ladies Island and have been for about 24 years. I'm also a realtor. So one of my things I'm addressing is this continued development, both residential and commercial, on Ladies Island. We had a meeting years ago at Ladies Island Elementary School where we were told that things would be done to slow down the development, to do reasonable development. As a realtor, one of the comments I hear when people come from someplace else is, this is so great. There's not a lot of big box things downtown. You can walk down Bay Street and you're not seeing everything you see in every other town. You're not seeing a Crate and Barrel. You're not seeing other stores that are everywhere. The other thing I'm hearing now with people as a realtor on Ladies Island is that the traffic is so bad now. There's accidents almost every day somewhere on Ladies Island, mainly at that intersection by Walgreens and the new Harris Teeters, which in itself is going to provide a lot more congestion. So I'm asking you to think really hard about sitting down and doing a workable plan that can control the growth, both commercially and residential, on Ladies Island, because people I know are already thinking of looking at someplace else so they don't have to go over the bridge and deal with the traffic. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Next is Felice Lamarca. Felicia or Felice?
Felice.
Okay. Thank you.
I am Felice Lamarca, 149 Cherry Point Road. I also attended the 2 planning commission meetings where this was proposed. And citizens talked, Coastal Conservation League, several environmental groups spoke, and the conclusion is pretty much how our neighborhood and our community feels. Staff sees the place overlay as a way to encourage development in walkable urban nodes, as opposed to low-density sprawl. What's wrong with 1 home per 3 acres? What's wrong with 1 home per acre? They say it will have positive impacts on our community. You've already permitted 700 homes between Malin Bluff and River Oaks, and they all can dump on Cherry Road. They have to come out and take a left turn on Highway 170. Now, we don't see any infrastructure progress because of those 2 developments. And staff says they are a part of this overlay district, which blows my mind, an additional 400 homes. So what's the positive impact on our community? Congestion, water runoff, less trees, more pavement, more heat, our lifestyle changes. Our lifestyle changes. Okay, there was an environmental study done. Really? Because I missed the part about the river. There was no mention of the Okatee River. And what was mentioned was how ordinary our birds and wildlife are. So they don't care about what happens to the environment. The study did not address the river. And if we don't, we're going to lose one of the most precious things we have. Okay, this is us, all of us, not just you, all of us. Yes, the applicant, I'm a realtor, and I looked it up, and I don't know who the applicant is. It appears it's not the owner of the property. That bothers me. Bothers me a lot. I would think that the Planning Commission made up of very talented people. I would think their opinion would matter. We witnessed the process 2 times. We witnessed the questions. We witnessed the answers. And what has happened, the end result, was more questions than answers.
Thank you for your comments.
And thank you very much.
Okay. Has Diane, Rendell, is she here? Okay. Terry Lassinger? And you're gonna speak on the Cherry Point number 10?
Yes, ma'am, I am. I'm Terry Lassiter, 146 Cherry Point Road. I've been there 32 years. I know a lot of your faces. I've seen them for many years. I have been involved from the get-go with comprehensive plan, Maitland and all, when it was originally done in 2007, 2008. I was also at the meetings, these last 2 meetings. And one of the things that was extremely disturbing is we cannot afford a traffic study because we used a traffic study from 2019. So, what are we doing? Why aren't we getting new information? Because believe me, there's a whole lot more cars out there right now than there was in 2019. I want you to take a different perspective of Okatee and look at it this way. Okatee is the center of a hub. You leave here and go to Savannah, you're going through Okatee. If Hardyville is going to Beaufort, they're going through Okatee. Highway 170 is a huge problem, and it's only going to get worse. Accidents, Bluffton was just in the news about how many accidents they have. We're hearing it with Ladies Island, and we're hearing this from several different places in the same county. That might be a problem. That might be someone needs to take a good look at that. And we have now too that Maitland Bluff wants to put 250 apartments up on 170 also. They're trying to push that through to get rid of their commercial property, trying to do us a favor by not putting any more commercial property up there. It's a real problem. The river, I can tell you right now, the BOD level is pretty close to where it shouldn't be. I can tell you for sure that the oyster beds up by 278
It's not this one.
down to Cherry Point are closed. And now they are closed at, all the way to Bailey's now. I can't think of back from there. I can't think of the name of the development. But anyway, they're closed. We cannot pick oysters anymore. Okay? It's a problem. What draws people to this area? There's 50% land in this county and 50% water. What draws them? It's not the land. It's the water, people. Okay? And all this development and this new one are going to drain straight into the Okatee River. There is no, check me, no retention ponds on that property for Rivers Oaks. There is a trench that runs along the backside of it, trenches over down parallel with Cherry Point Road, and a drain in the bottom of the pond. That is not retention. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lassiter. Okay, one last call for the person, Diane Rendell. Okay. If not, we will close public comment at this time and move on with the agenda. We have 2 updates, one from our 2 assistant county administrators. Who would like to go first? Ms. Audra? Okay. Okay, that's fine. Mr. Chuck Atkinson will go first.
Good afternoon. I warned Audra that if I went first, she may not have time to go at all. Good afternoon to all of you. I know you had a long day, so I'm going to keep this short. I'm going to give you bullet point updates of different projects and items that we have that are of interest. The Port Royal Library, the bid period for the contractor services bid closed on Friday, August 25th, and procurement received 1 bid. Capital Projects and Procurement will be bringing the project forward for council's approval at the September 25th Public Facilities and Safety Committee meeting, and they will cover specifics at that meeting. Green Space Committee The Green Space Program ordinance received committee approval and passed first reading by council on Monday, August 14th. As required by state law, the ordinance was submitted to the South Carolina Department of Revenue on Tuesday, August the 15th. On Friday, September 1st, the county received a letter from DOR accepting the program's criteria as being in compliance with applicable enabling legislation. Second reading by council is scheduled for tonight. The National Flood Insurance Community Rating System Annual Review and 3-year renewal process. It's a little lengthy, so it's very technical, so bear with me. I think it's something that the public needs to know about. The Beaufort County Building Codes Department administers the county's floodplain management program, participates in FEMA's voluntary community rating system program, and maintains a very high SO rating or Building Code Effectiveness Grading Schedule rating. That's a mouthful, which is a rating that tells us what a good job we do with loss mitigation as it relates to the built environment. And is accredited by the International Accreditation Service, and we update that annually. On August the 28th, the department submitted its annual certification packet, which included 400-plus pages of documentation to FEMA for review and approval. We are confident that this review will be successful, as it has been in years past, and that the county will continue to receive flood insurance premium discounts associated with being a Class 5 community. Beaufort County's 3-year renewal cycle and site visit will take place in 2024. It was originally supposed to happen this year, but the FEMA contractor called and requested that be pushed back a year. We submitted all the same documentation. It's just the site visit was pushed back a year. For context on what a good job our staff do, there are 12,000 National Flood Insurance Program communities in the United States. Of those 12,000, about 1,400 participate in the voluntary CRS program. Of that 1,400, less than 100 have a class of 5 or higher. That puts us in the top 0.8% in the nation as it relates to how well we administer and document our flood insurance program. The reward of that is that all flood insurance program holders who are in a special flood hazard area receive a 25% discount in their premium every year. That is a total savings, a direct savings to our taxpayers who have flood insurance policies of over $2 million a year. That's something that we are very proud of. It's something we've been doing for about 15 years, and we will continue to participate in that voluntary program. A few highlights on passive parks. Whitehall, the Whitehall Park on Ladies Island, the water service is finally connected. And the park is completed and is now open and fully operational. The site's pier and dock project is currently out for bid, and we hope to bring that contract forward very soon. Okeechobee River Park in Bluffton, the bid package has been completed and we will be put out for bid later this month. Camp St. Mary's Passive Parks project, the conceptual planning process has begun, and the existing structures demolition and asbestos survey project is currently out for bid. Our planning department, I want to give a reminder that on our website, about halfway down the website, there is a development projects dashboard link. If you click on that link, the dashboard is up to date and contains very usable information relating to the current development permit applications in the unincorporated parts of Beaufort County. I hope everybody will explore that site. If you have any questions, please call our staff. It's a wonderful resource. My last item, Defusky short-term rental permitting. The permitting grace period ends today, close of business, September 11, 2023. Currently, or to date, as of 2:30 this afternoon, we have received 21 total Defusky short-term rental applications. 11 of those have been approved and issued. 7 are under review. We've received a number of them end of last week and today. 3 of the total submitted were disapproved in accordance with the STR ordinance. 2 had site-specific covenants and restriction issues that prohibited SDRs on that lot, and the other one was submitted for a camper, and according to the ordinance, you're not allowed to rent out a camper short-term on Defusky Island. That concludes my report.
Okay, I'd like to open it up for questions. Anyone from council have questions? Yes,
I have a
ma'am.
comment. I really appreciate the development projects dashboard. It's really a good thing for residents to look at, to see what's happening around them, where it is in the development phase, and I encourage everybody to look at it. You have 29 projects right now that are active, but it's really a good website.
Thank you.
So congrats on that.
Any other questions? Port Royal Library, when do you anticipate possible conclusion of the contract?
So the bid award comes, we bring it forward to council. It has to go to committee and council for approval. Once we get approval, there'll be a lead time for, the contractor to start. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's about a 90-day project. I'm hesitant in
Sure.
today's environment to say that, but it's about a 90-day project. Concurrent with that project, the FF&E, the furniture, the fixtures and equipment that's going in the library, along with materials to go in the library, library staff are working on securing all those concurrently. So hopefully at the end of about that 90-day period, we'll be ready to open it.
Thank you. All right. Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much. All right. Next one, Ms. Audra.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. I'd just like to give a brief update on a few items in the Community Services Division. Last week, thanks to Laura Finelli, we were able to film 4 segments with WHHI with our Alcohol and Drug Abuse Department and our Board of Voter Registration Elections of Beaufort County. So she said that will air in a couple weeks and it'll go on a county channel and the social media. So the one for alcohol and drug, it was talking about treatment and recovery programs that the department offers. And voter registration was just giving reminders of citizens of the election, the general election in 2024, what you need to do to be a voter in Beaufort County. In the Human Services Department, as like every year, we are in the process of the Community Services Grant Program. The application, the deadline closed July 28th. We received over 30 applications, and that will go before the panel, and then I am looking to bring that before committee and then council for recommendation and approval in October. I'd like to, kind of give kudos to the Board of Voter Registration Elections to Beaufort County. They have been tirelessly working on securing polling locations and training poll workers for the general election in 2024. And as Eric Clausen mentioned at the last PFC, the expansion, the addition of the voter registration office on John Galt, that is moving forward. As you all are aware, Caroline Furman is the director of the Veterans Affairs Office. She came on board in June, and ever since she has come on board, she hit the ground running. She has done great things for that department so far. The first thing was that she hired a full-time counselor, Mr. John Abney. And Mr. John Abney and Caroline Furman have both completed accreditation training at SCDVA. And what Caroline is focusing on is making it more accommodating for our veterans. So she is working at going to the veterans, and that will take place north and south of the Broad. She will have a designated location and time on Hilton Head, Bluffton, Sun City, and in Beaufort, it will rotate from Beaufort, Lobico, and St. Helena. And I think that's pretty much about it.
Any questions from council members? No? I had a question, meeting with the veterans, are they gonna do it like in the library at Lobico?
Yes, and
in
she
St. Helena?
she reached out to the library and she did get authorization that she can use the library. So they are really cooperating and doing a great job in assisting her in that.
Polling locations, are they looking at more polling locations than we had in the last election?
Yes.
Okay, primarily where, do you know yet?
Both north and south of the Broad are
Both
needed.
north and south, more locations. Will we have the machines to go with them?
Yes,
you
ma'am.
think?
We
Okay.
will have the equipment.
We'll have the equipment?
Yes.
All right. I know that's always an issue. May have a location, but not enough machines, so.
Yes, we will have enough equipment. SEC makes sure that we have that. And then also, I would recommend once the WHHI is put out there, citizens look at that and review it, because there's so much information that Marie and Jean pretty much gave
Okay,
in those segments.
all right. No other questions? Okay,
Thank
thank you. Thanks. All right. I'd like to give a plug before we go on to number 8. On Thursday, I saw Miss Fields here, Brittany Fields, made me think about it. We're having reimagining Reebok Road, since we have a lot of people in the audience and on TV. It starts at 6 o'clock, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it's at TCL. And the Student Center runs from 6 to 8. Reimagine Reebok Road. Anyone who uses Reebok Road, this is a very important meeting. You don't have to live on Reebok Road for it to be important. It's a major artery for northern Beaufort County. This is your chance to make comments if there's things you do want to see or not see on Reebok Road. And we hope we have a high participation from everyone at that. Okay, moving on. Number 8 is the overview and background of Ladies Island Village Center Master Plan. Mr. Chuck, we talked about this been a month ago, I guess, or longer. I wanted to put this on the agenda so that our new council members and those of us who've been around could get a refresher on this. And this planning staff was kind enough to do it. And we're going to do a little bit of review and what's going on Ladies Island at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon, members of the Public Facilities and Land Use Committee. I wanted to just give a quick background of the Ladies Island Plan and the Village Center Master Plan and the status of implementation. So in 2019, the City of Beaufort and Beaufort County adopted the Ladies Island Plan. This was a area-wide plan for the island, and I would say that some of the things that kind of spurred on this desire to do planning for the island had to do with some development that the community was concerned about. I think there's blame to go around on both sides. I know that there was a lot of concern about the Walmart that located on Ladies Island, and some oyster bluff and clearance of trees and different things, started to create an interest among citizens to see whether there could be more coordinated effort to plan for the island. This process for the Ladies Island Plan took place over a period of about a year and a half, guided by a steering committee. We had public surveys, public meetings, and then it was adopted jointly. So out of that, we put together a Ladies Island Implementation Committee because the idea was that we had a very, a kind of a matrix of action items that came out of the plan. And we wanted to have a committee put together, really made up of the same people who steered the process to, make sure that the plan gets implemented. That committee met for about a year. And during that time, there was an interest in doing a much more focused plan around the Sea Island Parkway corridor, basically the commercial district through Ladies Island that is referred to as the Village Center. So a subcommittee formed out of that implementation task force or implementation committee called the Village Center Task Force. And they began to put together a scope for a Village Center master plan. I think that one of the issues early on is that there's never been a funding source assigned to this project. So, as staffing this committee, we're always looking at ways, how can we move this forward? And so we made, in 2021, we knew that the projects that are coming out of the 2018 sales tax referendum, there are $40 million allocated to road improvements on Ladies Island. And so one of the things that we looked at is how can we funnel this effort for Village Center Master Plan into the design of these road projects. And so we had worked, the county was already under contract with Stantec. Staff had worked on providing an amendment to that contract that would include a planning portion, working with the community looking at how to take all these road improvements and making sure that they were done and coordinated in such a way that would further the plan for Ladies Island and benefit the community. That effort, and we got approval from, at that time, what was the Natural Resources Committee for that approach, but the city did not go along with that. You know, we were looking at a split 50-50 funding, and so that kind of died, you know, and so about a year later, the Natural Resources Committee made a motion to allocate $25,000 toward a Ladies Island Village Center plan with the stipulation that that funding was matched by the city. The city agreed to match that funding. And so as staff, we worked to develop a scope of work. We had a contract, and that was approved, signed by Mr. Greenway. But at that time, the city was going through a change in, you know, city manager and planning director. So we reintroduced that to the city, but at that time, you know, they decided not to move forward with that approach. After those two, you know, we really have not revisited this plan. And so, but I wanted to give that background, you know, that there has been an interest. And I think that this is something that there's both a transportation component or public facilities component, because there are a lot of investments in Ladies Island, road projects. We have passive parks, boat landings, you know, and so, you know, our goal as staff was to make sure that as we're building, you know, if we're implementing these projects, they're done in such a way that these are, you know, really complementing each other, these improvements, and enhancing, you know, each project kind of furthers the goal of the plan. And there's also a land use component. Both the city and Beaufort County have zoning that encourages the development of a walkable community in the village center of Ladies Island. And so there's been a concern that we've taken some steps, but there's a lot of room for refinement in making sure those two zoning ordinances mesh better. And so those have been two of the fundamental, and I would say that the third one is then, once all the roadway improvements are built, what other opportunities, such as interconnectivity, could help solve the traffic congestion of the island and make it a more cohesive community? So those are kind of roughly some of the components that are part of this Village Center master plan idea. And that is really where we are right now, and I will entertain any questions.
Okay, I'll open it up for questions. Yes, sir.
Naturally, my district, I do have a lot of questions for you.
Yes.
One, so the $25,000, I guess, charrette that's been proposed right now, the city of Beaufort rejected that current proposal, right?
Yes, it would have been a $50,000 because both the city and the county agreed to fund half of it.
Okay. And what was that 50,000 25-hour park? What was that going to cover?
That was, so we had worked with a firm called SGA. The land planner is Bill Eubanks. He's done a lot of work in this community. And that plan was focused on taking a look at the zoning of the city and the county and identifying those areas where we need to kind of bring more uniformity into the zoning. It was also going to look at some vision, how to take what the zoning is intending to do and in creating some visuals that would help in communicating with developers and property owners to help forward the plan. And I believe we also had a component that would look at the future cross-section of Sea Island Parkway from the bridge to the main intersection.
And so would that lay out design standards in that proposal or in the charrette that was proposed?
Yeah, I mean, it would further refine the design standards. Both the city and the county have architectural standards on that.
And what, and please educate me on it, I'm new up here, but what traffic studies have been done? When was the most recent traffic study done for that area out there?
And I think,
Jared's over here. Jared.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, Stantec did their initial traffic study in 2017. And that pretty much informed the projects were part of the sales tax referendum, and then that was updated in 2021.
Okay, and I'm sorry, like I said,
No,
I had
no,
a few-
listen,
I had a
this
few
is why we're
questions,
doing
yeah.
this, yes.
So with the updated plan that incorporated the sales tax, I know a lot of those projects, I know people are wanting those to get done. I have a better understanding of, obviously, the funding has to come in before, engineering and implementation takes place. So is there anything that's been done that incorporates the traffic, the zoning, the design parameters, and takes a holistic approach to the Ladies Island, especially the Village Center? Has there been anything done other than a visioning document?
Well, so we have a visioning document, and it lays out, let's say that's a 20,000-foot view. But the city and the town both have zoning in place, they're transect zones, so the zoning, the land use policy is designed to implement the vision. Now, it needs refinement, because we have two jurisdictions, they don't necessarily always mesh. It's almost like you have all the pieces in place, and what you need to do is coordinate those pieces. And, as you said, kind of take a look at all the different components, make sure they're meshing together and make a refinement.
That's exactly what I want to get done. I heard from our previous administrator that we've spent a lot of money out there in Ladies Island, and he didn't want to spend any more. And I don't know what money has been spent out there. I don't know what planning has been done out there. Obviously, I've done a little bit of my own research on that, but it doesn't necessarily, I talk with constituents, it doesn't necessarily seem like money well spent. So I don't want to go spend $25,000 when we're leaving a lot on the table. I would rather scrap this and put something together that's going to take that holistic approach and actually get that master plan, that Village Center, get a cohesive effort together to look at the traffic, the road improvements, get the traffic off of Sea Island Parkway. I think the previous council, they had a proposal to widen Sea Island Parkway. And I was campaigning at that point, and people were up in arms about that. I mean, that was going to take property away, that was going to take parking away from businesses. I mean, that's part of the reason I think a master plan is needed. And I just don't want to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, essentially. I want to make sure that we're doing this right when we move it forward.
The study I just have a question, the Standec plan that was dated
2017 and then
and
updated.
updated in 2022. 21, okay. That plan addressed improvements to the parkway, including some medians and some other things that people objected to, if I remember correctly, or?
Yeah, it's had a colorful history. I mean,
Yes.
and I can, probably engineering can speak better to this, but the plan, the original approach by Stantec was designed to try to, you could either address congestion by widening roads or by trying to improve the transportation network. And so it was designed to take as many trips off of that main intersection as possible. The problem is then each one of those individual projects then, affects people. And so there's been revisions to as we've been, having community meetings. So I think engineering can speak better to the status of that and how the new, the revised projects work together. But that was the original approach was trying to improve the network of streets so that, people can avoid the main intersection or go to a signal to get out rather than trying to make a left turn, on a congested highway.
And if I remember correctly, there was numerous meetings and a lot of controversy about the high school access, which since the high school's been built,
Yes.
and through the park, or not, and how to do that. And that kind of, is it a standstill too? Is that correct? There's, as far as engineering's going?
Yeah.
If you don't mind,
I think
just so
Jared can speak to this.
all of it, I know this is, it's a series of events. Yeah. that have occurred in trying to implement what was on paper and what is reality, in my opinion.
Exactly. You're right on, Ms. Howard, is that basically on that specific section of the improvements out of the study, the high school realignment, we had various public forums and meetings and council or committee meetings and came to a let's do option nothing right now. And that's where we are. We couldn't find an option that majority agreed upon. And so we're kind of in a standstill as far as improvements on that section of.
And it impacted Crystal Lake.
That was one of the options. There's 5 options if I recall. So basically what we're doing currently with we're moving all the other projects forward as far as the sales tax and that stand tax study. The only thing we're doing on the section of Sea Island Parkway in that area of the high school is we're just improving the signal at Walgreens and going back towards the high school to fit in the taper. So that's all the improvements there, and then improvements at Sunset where it connects at Sea Island Drive. So Sunset and Miller.
Okay, I'll open up for other questions. I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine.
Councilman Cunningham.
I don't know this project as well as you guys do because it's in your area. You know, we all have different expertise and things we focus on, especially closer to our districts. But one thing that I've always been big on is where are we at and what are we doing? So just for clarity for everybody in the public and the rest of us on council, what is the next step? It sounds like we're just at a standstill right now. So what do we need to do at this point to take the next step to move something along to start making improvements or put something together? I don't know the answer to the vision. Like I said, it's not necessarily my expertise, but just same thing we talked about with the super penny. When we talked about it in January, I said, cool, boots on the ground. February, we started working, so we'd have plenty of time. So what do we need to do on our end to support staff and the public to start figuring out what we need to put together to put an image and an idea on paper?
Bob, answer that one.
I was looking at you for that one. I mean, so I guess from our standpoint as staff, you know, if this is in the interest of council moving forward, then, you know, we need, I guess, to work on what we believe are the necessary components of this plan. And then, you know, it comes down to funding.
Right.
You know, so it's really, you know, we're willing as staff to work whatever, you know, whether this is a small project or a big project, we're willing to work within those parameters. But that's, you know, we've looked at this quite a bit, and you know, so I would say that it would take an action of council, you know, to
Do you
pick this
need a
up and move
master
forward.
plan? Is there a recommendation for do a master plan of this? Or to at least seek to the cost that master plan would cost us so we could actually vote on it?
Or
Can
maybe
I
a
just
scope.
jump in and say
Yes.
one thing,
Yes, sir,
Councilman?
Councilman.
Larry and I, we represent Hilton Head Island, and one of the most strongest themes we hear is that there never was a master plan.
Yeah.
So to my colleague, David Bartholomew, I gotta tell you, I give you a lot of credit for pushing that. If you get that done and paying the money for that would save an awful lot of heartache. And also, I don't know, I think, for any more building and all, I think a master plan is the way to go.
Well,
If you push the scope, I would
let me
push
ask
the
Mr.
second.
Councilman Taberman.
I have two questions. I'm not sure Mr. Bertrand or Jared can answer it. One, we said we would give $25,000, the previous council. But the city of Beaufort said, no, they don't want to participate in the contract. So I'm wondering why they said that. And the second thing is, our second speaker today, Chuck Newton, said it's $1 million for a plan, for a comprehensive plan, which is 40 times 25,000. Are those, can you rationalize that for me?
I'm not sure
Well-
that's what Mr. Newton said, $1 million.
He said $1 million. I heard 1 million. He dropped it. Am I wrong on that?
Not for the master plan.
If I can maybe editorialize a little bit.
Please
Go
do.
ahead.
So I think the master plan, the idea of a master plan means something different to each person. So I think it's reminding ourselves, what are the components, the necessary components to moving forward? And so, you know, defining that and then figuring out, is this a $50,000 project, a $200,000 project, you know, being able to come back with some sort of recommendation that way. But I do think, and I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, but I know that there's that issue of Sea Island Parkway between the bridge and the intersection. That is on hold, but that's something we do anticipate eventually will pick up again.
Yeah, I mean, so there's obviously a lot of traffic in that section, and it plays to the overall system. It's a matter of how we address that, whether we address that in a more downtown urbanized section. You're kind of in a situation on the traffic perspective, not necessarily the zoning, but it's a cake and eat it too. Do you want less traffic, but less availability of traversing through the area, or the better flow of traffic, but less urbanization and walking capacity? So it's, and that charrette, we got as far as we could with the transportation before we couldn't come to a solution on transportation. So to your point, is this the right solution? To put it all together, we got different components. It possibly is. I'm not sure what's the difference on the city side, whether they would support this or not. I think there probably is support. As far as the cost, whether it's 50,000 or $1 million, I can fairly confident say that it's not budgeted.
Well, I know that, yeah, I got that.
So those are concerns, and I think
That's why we wanted to do this meeting. Yes, sir,
Maybe the city
Chairman.
will pay for it.
Listening to everyone, it looks like we have a plan that may have flaws in it. And in order for us to move forward with a referendum that comes up in 2024 to address issues in the various areas around, I think we need a collaboration between the city of Beaufort and the county to talk about this plan and what it needs so that we can instruct the community, if this is what the plan says, this is how we achieve the plan. So, I'm not sure that $25,000 or $50,000 is going to get us anything. I think we need to have a meeting with our counterparts in the city of Beaufort to lay out a scope of what we want as a master plan, like Mr. Reed said and Mr. Bartholomew said, so that if we have that kind of plan, we know what it's going to cost to achieve that.
Yeah, and to that point a little bit, so initially the 2017 study was $30 million, and that was brought forward in the 2018 sales tax to $30 million
To do the transportation.
to do the transportation
Right.
side of this. What was not conceived in that study was the cost for widening and right-of-way, because there wasn't a sales tax envisioned at the time of the 2017. So after we got through that, we did a full cost of all the scoping of those 9 projects to a cost around $70 million. So we knew we're short on that project. We're moving forward on the design on all of them, and we're getting started on the construction of some of them. Last year's sales tax committee, before they took new projects, they made, in their recommendation to council, they said, let's plus up the old projects and make sure that scope is fully envisioned and paid for. And so we're about to start that process again with a new sales tax committee, and we're kind of using that as the jumping off point, last year's recommendation. So if the scope is bigger than what was envisioned in the 2017 Stantec study and updated study in 2021, then now would be the time. So if you wanted to incorporate that in a future sales tax funding possibility for the road
For
part
the,
of
for the
it.
transportation part of it. So, I don't think we need a motion, but just some direction at this point. Yes, sir, you got another question?
If you wouldn't mind, more of a, I guess it is a question. Since we are just having nothing that has an action being taken unless there's a recommendation after sense of discussion, I agree with the chairman. There has to be conversation with Beaufort. Thankfully, we do have the mayor here right now. I don't know if that's something that he would be
I
willing
think
to.
we need to let staff talk first before we. I do,
Understandable.
Yeah.
But one of the questions was from Tab about the $25,000 on their half. I don't know if that's something we could get an answer for, as we didn't get an answer for that, of why Beaufort decided not to engage in that.
I don't,
I really recommend we not do that this time. I think we need to let,
I don't know
because
the
that's-
answer to that, but we've had
that's
some
under the-
initial
that's water under the
conversations
bridge.
with town staff,
Yeah.
and I think they're open to exploring the idea, whether that's 25 or beyond, I don't know, but
But
We've had some discussions with staff.
I'd like to, Councilman Bartholomew,
Just one final.
unless Councilman Cunningham has something else to add.
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Just one final. I really think this is a wonderful opportunity right now to get out in front of this. We have Whitehall development coming out there on Ladies Island. We have Reimagine Revo.
Right.
We have all these stakeholders. We have the growth that's out there on Ladies Island. We can, if we do it right, we can make that urbanization happen on Ladies Island, make it usable, give it an identity, but also protect St. Helena from the growth. If we do it right, we can keep that rural while we make that village center usable for the residents of Ladies Island and incorporate folks from downtown. I just think getting something, it sounds like to me, we don't really have a consensus on everything that's going on out there, and we need to get a consensus put together. I don't know if we need to, can I put forward, maybe get a scope back from them, maybe put that in?
And to work with the city of Beaufort, we have
Yeah.
a new planning director, they have new staff, they have a new city manager. If you want to
I
make
think-
that as a recommendation, we don't have to take a vote on it.
Yeah, that's the direction that we should be
Yeah.
giving our staff to coordinate with the city of Beaufort about how do we move forward now? What can we do jointly to ensure that any plan we put together can be a plan that we agree to and can implement? Because we have the referendum coming up, and we may need to put things in that referendum based upon this plan.
So if,
May I?
yes,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
if you're
if
gonna
you
do
want
the
to make a
plan,
motion.
just a comment, you have to put a dollar amount in there. I mean,
Right.
we can't just have a plan.
Right.
You have to put some money in there so we know what the budget's gonna be.
But I think, to your point, Councilman Bartholomew, and to Chairman Passman, if we can ask the administration to work with the city of Beaufort and our staff and their staff to come up with, before we go for this referendum, tax referendum.
ma'am, we'll take that.
Can I have a request on that?
Mm-hmm.
That we are all kept in the loop on that and it's not
Sure.
just a one-sided thing?
Right,
That would be my only request from conversations we've had previously.
we can put it on the agenda for the next community services and land use. We'll keep it on the agenda.
And Chairwoman Howard, thank you for getting this on the agenda.
Yeah.
I greatly appreciate it. And thank you, Rob, Jared, thank y'all so much.
Thank you for the update and the review. And not let the mayor speak, but I think we're moving forward, and we're gonna have an update at the next meeting of, community services and land use, okay?
All right.
There's no use beating the old dead horse, right? We're gonna go forward, all right? Thank you, or the new one. All right, moving on the agenda, number 9. Anything else on that? Recommend approval of an ordinance for a proposed text amendment to Article 7, Division 7.4, Section 7.4.50, public hearing scheduling and noticing, and Section 7.470, public hearing procedures, to clarify that public comment is not taken for appeals. So this is for appeals only, to the Planning Commission or the Zoning Board of Appeals. And Mr. Merchant, you're going
Okay.
to speak to that, correct?
Yes, and this particular amendment came at the recommendation from the, county attorney. So basically, both the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals hear appeals. And when they do that, they take on what they call a quasi-judicial process, which is kind of like a miniature court hearing. And so when they're looking at an appeal, they're typically appealing a decision made by staff. Zoning Board of Appeals, that's a zoning decision. If we make a determination about particular land use that is allowed in a district and somebody doesn't agree, they may appeal our decision, and then that goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals. In the case of the Planning Commission, they hear when it is a land development or subdivision, and they don't agree with staff's position. When the Planning Commission or ZBOA hears the appeal, they're only looking at the evidence that staff used in making that determination. And so we ran into some ambiguity in the language in our ordinance that could be interpreted as allowing public comment when there is an appeal. Certainly the public is welcome to attend the meeting, but they're not offering any additional information that the decision makers are going to be using to make their decision. And so the amendments that you're looking at are to provide more clarity in that. So that is what you're looking at today.
I'd like to open it up for questions. No?
Good.
No question?
Think we
Do you
need
have
to
a
move
question?
it.
No? I'll entertain a motion.
Yes, I'll make that motion that we move this on to council for first reading of the ordinance.
We have a motion by Chairman Passman. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, second by Vice Chairman McKellen. Without objection, this will go on to the full council. Thank you. And then number 10 is recommend approval of an ordinance for zoning map amendment, rezoning request for 71.54 acres located, and I'm not going to read the ID, it's in the agenda, located at 1691 Okatee Highway from T2 Rural to T4 Neighborhood Center and T3 Neighborhood using a village place type overlay, PTO, Article 3, Division 4, Section 80, Article 7, Division 3, Section 50. And this will be briefed by Mr. Merchant. And I requested that we do a drone overview. He's going to run it forward for that, but just so that people on council and the public can see how this relates to other areas and where this property is located at, and then we'll get into the meat of the rezoning request.
I have, it's a large file, so.
It's going to stagger a little bit.
Yeah. But basically, this is, as you mentioned, this is a 71-acre parcel that is located directly south of Cherry Point Road at the intersection of Cherry Point Road and 170. So it also is located immediately south of Okatee Elementary School, so to give you some idea. So it actually adjoins Okatee Elementary School across Cherry Point Road and River Oaks, which is a new subdivision that is going in that has approximately 300 units. And then River Oaks adjoins Malin Bluff, which has about 300 units, so or 350. I think Mark can provide you with the exact numbers there. But I wanted to just give a brief background, then I'm going to hand this over to Mark Davis. But the proposal that is coming forward is unique. This council has not looked at a proposal like this before, but we have a tool in our code called a place type overlay district. And in our comprehensive plan, in this particular area along 170, the plan calls for nodes of development in more compact walkable communities rather than having it sprawling along the corridor. And so the future land use plan actually identifies areas that, you know, if we were to consider an upzoning, should upzone in a more walkable nature. And it's not a one size fits all. We have, if you're out in a rural area, we have something called rural crossroads. So like in the Sheldon community, Big Estates, Gardens Corner, those are rural crossroads. Then we have hamlet, then we have village. And so what is being proposed here, because this coincides with a village place type in our comprehensive plan, is that they use a tool that is available in our community development code. And this is a little different than a straightforward rezoning. I guess we're on the Okatee River now. I figured rather than narrate, I'll just let you watch the scenery. But,
is a portion of it on the Okatee?
This property does not. It does front a saltwater inlet. I believe it's a marsh or a very small creek. But the Cherry Point subdivision is actually on the Okatee River. So a typical rezoning, we look at a change from one district to another. You know, if they're zone T2 rural, they want to rezone to C3 or C4. And really, we are required to look at, even if they have a particular development in mind, we have to look at all the things that district permits, because if you zone your property and it's a commercial mixed-use district, we can't really place any additional conditions on that rezoning. So somebody is entitled if it's supported on the land, to do whatever that zoning district allows. What this does is the place type overlay recommends kind of a range of districts to be adopted in an area. So village place type is going to have some more dense development at its core, and then as it goes further away from that core, it's going to get less dense. And so when it is adopted on the map, it'll appear as different districts, so they'll have T4 Hamlet Center, let's say at the center, it may taper down to T3 neighborhood, and then T3 Hamlet neighborhood as you get further away from the center. But it's in addition to the just the straightforward zoning districts, this also requires the adoption of a thoroughfare plan or a roads plan for the neighborhood. So, as part of the adoption, you're adopting a system of streets and cross sections of those streets. And then also open space, is adopted as well. What this does, in some ways, it has some similarity to the old plan unit development or PUD in that you're adopting more than just zoning districts, but a master plan. But what it allows the county is that, if we are making a decision to move in this direction, we have much more surety of the character of development, because not only are they showing the districts, they're showing the street and block layout, where the open space is going to be. So it's something that provides a little more surety in how it is implemented, versus just a straightforward rezoning. I wanted to give that background, as Mark moves forward. In our comprehensive plan for this area, it recommends this type of upzoning, and so as staff, when you look at why is staff supporting this, well, we're going to the land use plan in the comprehensive plan, where it outlines this as a village place type, and then implementing it through what the ordinance lays out as the process to do this. So that's kind of giving you just a broad overview.
And what was the vote at the planning commission for the rest of council?
5-2 against.
Yeah, it was
5-2.
5 against 2-4.
And that was the most recent, and it was
Yes.
presented previously, and the applicant came back with this plan based on the previous, they were postponed, so, and then they came back with this, correct?
I went to the July meeting, and at that time, and I can't remember if the planning commission recommended
They tabled it.
delaying it.
Yeah,
Okay,
they tabled in July.
they
came back
tabled
on
it in July, because sometimes the applicant may request that.
But it was the planning commission.
Yeah, it was the planning commission. They tabled in July, and then in August, they reviewed it and then made a recommendation to deny.
Do you want to let Mark present now, or do you want some other questions before we start?
I mean, if you have any kind of broad, Mark will go into the details of the plan, but if you have some kind of like broad policy
Any broad
questions.
questions?
I do.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Comments were made by individuals. The first one was that this is 71 acres, and you can't allow what they want to propose here, because you need a minimum of 150 acres. Is that accurate?
Well, so the plan says that a village at a minimum, if you have a village place type, it should be 71 acres. But when we looked at contiguous development, Okatee Elementary School and River Oaks, we saw this as a component of this larger village. And so that is how we interpreted that as staff.
Okay. The second question was that, this is going to directly affect the Okatee River. And it is not right on the river. I do see one little section there where the word marsh is. How is that being controlled?
Well, it's being controlled through, part of it would be the open space plan. They have their buffers and open space along Tidal Creek that runs on the south side of the property. In addition, they have to follow our SoLoco stormwater manual. So water will be treated to pre-development, runoff at post-development. So, all of those things, including our river buffers, are designed to minimize the impact of stormwater. So that would be how we would be mitigating the development here, is through the tools that we have.
The next one was that the traffic impact analysis hasn't been done for here.
No, we have a traffic impact.
There's been
analysis.
one, and there's been some traffic study and some improvements that have been suggested based on those. We can get into that more so. I believe our engineering department's here to answer any more detailed questions in that.
Okay.
But once we get into the plan, we can jump into that stuff.
Okay, next was that River Oaks did not have any retention ponds.
Well, they do have retention ponds. I mean,
I don't-
stormwater could speak to that, but I mean, they do have ponds in their development. They're part of the stormwater master plan.
Right, and I do know, because I do live in that area, that the oyster beds have been closed. Due to DHAC coming down and saying that there is a problem here. And we know why some of the problem exists there.
Okay.
That's,
What about the schools?
I am not aware that the school district is going to be impacted by this particular development. I don't know that for sure. I do know in their referendum that they intend to build a new elementary school to take the pressure off the various elementary schools in Bluffton.
Yes, and I believe it's going to be over in New Riverside.
Yes, it is.
But Okatee Elementary has a very large attendance area. So it's our understanding this would have an impact of making their attendance area smaller, and it would be shouldered by a neighboring school.
Okay, we have any other broad questions? Okay, Councilman Cunningham?
Just to follow up with one of Mr. Passman's question, I don't think we got an answer to his first one about the number of houses per square footage, why it's being justified if it doesn't meet our normal code.
Right.
He asked
No,
the
no,
question
I-
about.
You mean the minimum
The
threshold?
comment was, this could not be approved because the acreage is only 71 and you need 150 acres for
Correct.
this type.
So I don't think we got an answer of why it's being allowed at 71 though.
Well,
Well, I might have missed it, I'm just.
yeah, so what we're looking at is our comprehensive plan says this is a village place type. And so when we look at this development, this is not a standalone village. It's really building off of adjoining development at Okatee Elementary and then also at the River Oaks subdivision. So the acreage of those additional developments that are, that adjoin this, that would be, connected through roads are part of the whole.
So it's a gray area.
Yeah, it's a staff interpretation, but when you never have parcels perfectly sized
Right.
to create a village. So in a way, in an ideal world, it's going to be a component of several adjoining.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, a couple more questions. The other one was, do we have a date on that study, that traffic study? I think somebody said 2017, but it wasn't staff.
I think yes, Mark.
19.
He's gonna get into
No.
the details.
There's more.
Okay. But it was recently, 2019,
Oh, yes.
2020-ish?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
Is any of the housing that's gonna be
Oh, there you
developed, gonna be applicable for workforce housing?
Well, that's a question for council as we move forward. So through this place type overlay, we don't have a requirement for that, but if council wants to move in that direction, that's obviously something that could be implemented through something like a development agreement.
Okay.
But there is a mix of housing types.
There's a mix of housing.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to let,
We have Mark, go
we have
ahead.
another one?
Yes,
Okay.
so interpreting the word village, I'm assuming that we're talking about different types of houses, open land space, and commercial. Is that red buildings towards the road of 170, I'm assuming is commercial?
Well, that
That's their
district,
interpretation that they're planning for?
yes, so that district is a mixed-use district. It allows for a wide range of commercial.
Yep.
And that, once again, that's a question, the district allows it. To require it, or to require it to be timed with development is something that
Two
would have to
separate
work
things.
through.
Yes.
you
Yeah,
know,
that
different
leads me to my biggest question of it all. We have this exact same problem with one lot north of this on Malin Bluff. It's currently trying to be rezoned for like the third time because they can't or don't want to sell it as commercial property.
Yeah.
Because they're saying it's gonna take too long to develop, but yet we're considering doing the exact same process a mile down the road south of doing commercial on the front when we can't sell the commercial property that's right next door to it. I think it's literally that next block up, at the entrance of Malin Bluff. When Pulte Homes did that, and the developer of the front land sold the back off to Pulte, and now they're trying to change what they originally planned when they sold the houses as residential and it was supposed to be commercial. They even sold them golf cart garages to get to the garage to the commercial property. Now they're trying to like do workforce housing and apartments and then try to add a little bit of commercial into it. If they're having problems with commercial, what makes us believe that this lot right here is gonna have the ability to sell their commercial property?
The applicant is here, and I think that's a good
I think
question
this,
for them.
well, the applicant can address that when we get to that, but, Ms. Tavernick?
I listened to both of the planning commission, so it was like 5 hours. That was my mind.
Yeah.
So if I understand this right, T2 rural goes 1 dwelling per 3 acres.
Yes.
And if we're looking, this would be 6 units per an acre. Okay. My biggest concern, obviously, is the school. They're at 91% capacity. I understand if the referendum passes, they're gonna build more, but we're gonna be busing kids all the way down there. And as an educator, I'm not up for that. But also Bluffton Middle School's at 84%, May River's at 91% capacity. We're talking about adding over 400 new homes here. All I could think about is when I drive 170 to come here, it is a veritable nightmare, period. Now we're gonna drop 400 more houses. I heard them say 50 trips and all this stuff. But I understand we're gonna do improvements on 170, but not that fast. So I'm concerned about the traffic on 170. I'm concerned about the schools. I'm concerned about the infrastructure. I know we have plans, but it's not there. BJWSA. And again, this is a lot of units, and then we have another development that wants to pop right in there too. And I know I ran and some other people ran on limiting some of the growth or managing growth, because south of the Broad, it's exploding. And this is example 1 right here in front of me. So I'm just having a real hard time with this. And if I lived in Malin Bluff, I'd be having a fit. As a Sun City resident, I had a fit when our developer did things like this. But we keep changing the landscape on these people. And this is a rezoning, which means we don't have to approve it. Okay,
All
and I
right.
heard somebody say they didn't buy it yet? They
Well,
didn't
that,
purchase it?
the applicant can speak to that, but that's
Okay.
actually happens,
How it
often,
works, yeah.
it's a condition of sale,
Yep.
go through a
Okay, we're gonna go into the weeds a little bit more, and we're
Okay.
gonna let Mark Davis come forward, and then we'll let the applicant come forward.
If it's okay, I'm gonna speak from here and drive. 'cause I
Can
just wanna-
everyone hear him? Good?
You can drive? All right, so I'm just
Okay.
gonna-
You can
No,
drive.
you're gonna come up to the podium. Okay.
Not on 170, you can't drive.
So all the comments that have been made associated to this, everybody's right, nobody's wrong. In regards to, there are concerns, there are environmental, there are traffic, there are school. These are problems that we have throughout the county. What we're bringing forward to you today, because we received an application to rezone the property. When staff receives these, we have to process them, we have to bring them forward. What we're bringing you today is an example of a tool that we currently have in the toolbox to allow rezoning and development plans to be done that allows us to get in some detail of the plans that I'm about to get into. So when they come to planning commission, they come to council, you all get an opportunity and a say and a chance to be a part of the design. Like usually you just kind of approve a blank slate and then staff just goes through development review and then development just ends up the way it is. This is not that. This is a tool for the planning commission, leaders of this county to be involved in site design of a rezoning at that time. So you know exactly what you're getting, what you're approving. In addition to that, if you accompany it with a development agreement, you can time it with phases, units, requirements of off-street infrastructure associated, because we know we can plug in exactly the amount of units. We have all of the inputs put in at that time. So our traffic engineers can take those numbers and see where they fall, because lots of times, sometimes zoning, you don't know what you're gonna get. So we can cohesively do that all at one time. The applicant can speak towards their commitments on it, but staff would be looking to implement something with all of those things in place. What we're bringing forward is a tool for a land plan. What the leaders of this county want to do with that land plan is up to you. What kind of housing you want to have in it, what's important to you. All of it can be done. You all have to decide that. So I just kind of want to leave with that. Go to the, can you, just go, so that's just kind of this is a regulating plan. So real quick, I'm going to run through the plan so you can see what they make up of. So this is actually the rezoning. Usually you just see a color. This is the plan you all get to look at as a part of these PTOs. So here you'll see the different zoning types, and this is regulated by the Community Development Code. To go back to, Logan, your concerns on the front, not all of that is commercial. We had the same ideas. Most of that up front are small house, like the way they're proposing it based off the block sizes, are small apartment buildings. That little piece up there where you kind of see some white outlines are like kind of office commercial that's programmed. I believe the traffic study programmed somewhere between 25 and 50,000 square feet. So we kind of had the similar thoughts. All of that can change. We can add more, we can take some away. We can accompany it for it in the development agreement. We can make buffers bigger. We can do anything we want here. But the most important is this is a staff, planning commission, and council effort in these things as we do these place type overlays. So this is the zoning. You can see it's kind of got the streets. It's got some basic grid setup networks. Usually you all don't see this much. So this is what we call a thoroughfare plan. So again, remember, we're only talking rezoning at this level, but this is the details you get. So the thoroughfare plan, you can kind of see it's color coded, and you see detailed sections that kind of specify the lane widths, whether it's got on-street parking, and the type of road section that's associated to a particular block. So a lot of times in these things, we have what's called block size perimeter. That's how you know you keep something walkable. So all of these have to meet a block size perimeter. There's a lot of alleys in there. So that's what your thoroughfare plan. So we know the roads and the street sections we're getting to serve that particular density or that use at that time. So for instance, if I'm on an alley and I've got a house fronting a street, I might want on-street parking on that side. Because that makes sense, that's good design. So these plans here can give us that. And as this, if it was to get approved, they have to build that plan. They have to build it. And the weight of this process doesn't allow a developer, when it's just staff and them during our SRT, to push us around, which they do often. This is the civic space, buffer and open space plan. This plan here details your buffers, your civic space, your open space, what types, if you look at the chart, kind of gives you an example of their sizes, what they're used for. So if you put all of these together, you start to kind of layer it. Your uses, your roads, and your open space. What it doesn't do is dictate the product. So you can't say it's an apartment. You can't necessarily say at this time it's a townhouse or a duplex. That's the applicant. They have so many residential units that they get to burn in that process. Now, like the back portion, can you kind of maybe go back to the sketch plan right there. The very back portion, closer to the river, for instance, that would be in the transect scale as you get closer to the road where you can see it's a little bit more dense. That particular zoning transect is more dense, has more intense uses. As you get towards the back, it lessens up. Mm-hmm. It would make sense to program that. Again, this is a program that's more single family, kind of estate size lots. You get through that natural divide, now you get to the other side. You kind of have an area in there where you might have maybe some more single family, smaller lots.
And as you get closer up and the colors change, you can start getting into townhouses, duplexes. Does it allow? No, T4. Well, you can have multiple types of housing. Now, we as in our PTO right now, we're not getting that detail, mine is showing you the blocks. However, as a part of this process, if it was the county's will for staff to get into that, to specifically show what kind of, we're getting townhouses, we're getting duplexes, where we're getting singles, so you get that mix, and we can do that. The applicant would have to be willing to do that though, because our community development code doesn't force that as a part of this, but we could ask for it if we wanted to, because then we would use that in the development agreement, calling out the numbers. So, Rob?
Could we take anyone have any questions about that?
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot to take in. Do you have?
No, I did see, if you go to the next slide, there was like a little number, the next slide. You see the number, well, you see the black lines between the very back and there's all the green area. Is that walking trails?
The black lines?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be like a multi-use path throughout the
Okay.
community. And you can see like along Cherry Point Road, there's some things that are labeled.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the thoroughfare plan's gonna dictate your roads, your streets, your cross sections. And we would also be able to show like multi-use pathways, because technically they're pedestrian thoroughfares.
Okay.
And that would be dictated through the regulating plan.
What's the tool to enforce that?
That plan and a development agreement.
And the development.
Very good question, yes.
I mean, I knew the answer, but I wanted you to
Yes,
say
oh
it.
no, I mean,
Everyone's
I
gonna
wanted to
do
be
it.
very clear that one of staff's things, and the applicant comes up here, we have told them, this is a regulating plan. By the time we're done with you on this, if this is something that the county wants, it will be locked tight between that plan and the development agreement.
Okay.
And if they don't want to build it, they're gonna have to come back through this whole process based off of what we agree to. I would even go as far, I don't want to go, but I would, if it was me and I was doing development agreement, I would say that the developer doesn't have a right to request an amendment for 10 years.
Okay, we can go for okay, Councilman Cunningham.
Yeah, like, the idea looks great. It looks great on paper. It's very enticing for us to be a part of a project. But even if we are a part of the project and the idea looks great, it still doesn't solve any of the issues that we have outlined with the roads, with the traffic, with the schools. So like, it's very enticing for all of us up here to say, oh yeah, this is a great idea on paper. This could be a great project for us. We can force them to do workforce housing. We could force them to do all these different things. But it's still 400 and some homes with at least 600 cars then, 2-to-1 ratio. So it still doesn't fix those issues. Don't get me wrong, I love the design. I think it'd be a great community.
There would be a lot of
go there.
off-site traffic improvements associated to this development that the developer would have to pay for. Intersection and Cherry Point.
I would think intersection, lights,
Well, they're
sidewalks.
here, and that's part of some of their presentations. That was one of the things the planning commission had at their first visit. Then they came back to the second visit and gave a very detailed description of what type of improvements would be made at what times. Now, does it fix 170? No. Is it gonna fix the school? No. But what I can say is what the conversations we've had today regarding it is that it will improve Cherry Point. It'll improve that, kind of make up for the lost opportunity to the people who live back there. They're not wrong. That road and that school should never have been placed on that road in that condition. We are trying to help fix that today. But if we,
Okay, thank you. We need to let the applicant present, I think, at this point, because we have to still
I
do
know.
executive session.
okay.
Okay, and then we'll, if the applicant would like to come forward, state your name, representing the applicant. Now, we have several options after you hear the applicant, you know, of what action we can take, and I think most of county council realizes what those options are. We can.
This goes to council, right?
It has to go to council, with a recommendation or even postponement if we feel that's necessary. Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Dukes.
Madam Chairwoman and members of council. My name is Kevin Dukes. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Harvey and Batty, and I represent the applicant in this matter. The applicant's been working with the county for a few years on this. There have been various iterations. This has come through to this process of this place type overlay recently to address a lot of these things and really to lock in, the development. And so I would like to start by saying that this, when you look at the comprehensive plan, there is a circle around this particular area, and it is for a village place type overlay in this area. And so it's very specific that under the comp plan, that's what the council wanted to have here, and we're trying to utilize this tool to get there. I'm not going to go through everything that I originally said because I think we need to spend time addressing some of the comments, and I would start by saying this project is not just any old development. We have heard from the public, we've heard from the Planning Commission, we've heard from council, and we have made changes all along the way to try to be a solution to the problems that are in this area and not to, be seen as, contributing to the problem. That's the way it seems to be portrayed, but I'm going to go through a few things of what I mean by solution-oriented development here. First, we have this village concept. We have the higher density, which is radiating out towards a lower dense section, single family. A lot of that has to do with, we don't want to bump up against the neighborhood back there. They were clear. We increased the buffer between this development and the neighborhood in a direct response from the public comment that came out. Also, the diversity of housing that's here. This village place type allows for us to have that diversity of housing. That allows for rental units. We're going to have fee simple ownership. There's going to be multiple types of fee simple ownership. There's going to be townhomes. There's going to be multifamily, all fee simple. There's going to be single family, so that we can provide entry-level transitional housing while at the same time having housing in the back, which is long-term growth and ability to create wealth and housing for these individuals and to create a product that we're all proud of, that we want to see, that's a quality development. Some of those entry-level, houses may be achieved not by a reduction in quality, but rather by a reduction in size. Square footage, building, same, but we're going to reduce that. We're also going to provide workforce housing. There's a direct question here about workforce housing. We're putting out there that 20% of the project be workforce housing. And we think that that's significant. We think that there's a problem in this county for workforce housing, and we think that that helps. It doesn't solve the problem. Not one property owner, not one development can solve the problem. Just like traffic. One of the things we're proposing as part of this development is we are proposing at our cost to put in an intersection at the Riverwalk Boulevard and the south entrance on this development. That'll provide interconnectivity. It'll allow residents to the back to enter in there. It will improve a very dangerous situation at Riverwalk. Now, that is something, one of the questions that the Planning Commission had is, okay, you're doing off-site improvements. How do those fit into the county's plan? They directly fit into the county's plan. That's what we're going to build and implement traffic improvements, which our engineer, who also is working on the county's plan for 170, is part of that long-term plan. So what I would posit to the members here is that not only is it being paid for by the developer, but it's also going to be achieved and implemented likely far before it would be able to be done by the county, by the time you have the funding and the approvals and the design. And so we think that's a positive. We think that improves. Now, mind you, it's incremental. It's not going to improve 170. But this project improves 170 and improves the traffic. Additionally, there'll be turn lanes at Cherry Point. It'll increase Cherry Point. That's a problem for the school with stacking, pickup, drop-off, et cetera. To that point, another solution of this is that this is going to have children that live in this neighborhood. There's no doubt. But this is not the field of dreams. We're not building it so that they will come. The children are here. And this is going to provide an opportunity for these kids to walk. There's not going to be the school buses. There's not going to be the drop-off. Yeah. This is actually a better solution than what we heard from Rob, that Okatee has a very large attendance area. That means buses. That means expense. That means damage on the roadways. That means stacking from parents, all those things that will be better served by this. Again, it doesn't solve the whole problem. But how many projects come and actually present any good solutions to the county? We're trying to address in every single area solutions to provide through this process. And those have been developed throughout the process in close work with staff, by listening to the community, by listening to council members. That's what we've tried to do. So I think that hearing those things and moving forward, that's what we're trying to achieve, is this solutions-based, development that will provide benefits for the county while allowing development on a piece of property which has been designated to be developed in this way.
Okay, I'm gonna open it up for questions.
Just one.
Okay, Councilman Ritt?
What will be the AMI for that 20% that you alluded to?
So that's a great question. I am not an AMI guru, but what I'm saying, we've talked about, and this is fairly new in our design as far as what we're going to be putting out there. What we want to see is 20%, and that can be measured in several different ways. It could be 20% of single family, it could be 20% of all units that is kept within a range, and that can be determined before we get to first reading. It can be determined throughout the process. This is a fairly new change to the plan, and we're still working in that, but I did want to make that mention that, and we're willing to commit to a number. But we're not just standing here saying, we're gonna do workforce housing, trust us. I mean, it's on video, you heard 20%, that's 20% of the units. We may determine, and, have been told to look towards maybe the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust. I have a call in, to their director. I've not been able to touch base with her. I was just giving her contact Thursday last week, and I've called Friday and Monday. So we're gonna try to work with some partners to develop some of that and make that happen.
The AMI is based on income.
Correct, and there's a question of how we're measuring that, whether it's, both individuals in the household, and then how that's done, and how we're gonna measure that against interest rates and affordability. And so I'm not an expert on that, and I don't think, but we're certainly willing to answer those questions and happy to answer those questions and tie it to specifics like that. And I think that it's very important. And Mark's right, he's been 100%, straight with us that no amendments. And I will point out that we heard about Malin, and that's true. That's the old way. That's the PUD. That's where the developers came in and said, just give me a rezoning of this, this area. And that's where it happened. But that's not what we're talking about. And if you want to put no amendments in there as far as development, that can be done. And there's a way to protect against that. So, I would just point out that that's not what we're asking for, and that's not where we're headed.
Any quick questions before? Yes, sir.
Once you get to the AMI levels, 80 units out of 400 doesn't seem sufficient to me for workforce housing. So I hope that's not your final offer.
Well, I didn't know that we were going to negotiate, but
No, we're not.
I didn't know that.
We have time ahead of us.
Sure,
I'm just saying, it doesn't seem to me to be sufficient for what we're trying to do, because that's a first priority here for us is workforce housing. So when you're thinking about a number, I'm not sure 80 is sufficient. That's all I have to say. You don't have to offer me 150 a year. I'm just saying that it's nice, but I don't think that that's a sufficient number. That's all.
So we have some choices. We can move it forward to full council, or we can take a vote to not vote for the rezoning, or we can postpone it. I see those as our three
Right now, we
choices.
don't even have a motion currently.
We have nothing at this point, so, those are the three choices.
I personally would like to move it forward to hear more about it.
Yes.
And I think
Yes,
it's a
I'm
good
gonna make the
project.
motion to move this forward to council.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second by Councilman Bartholomew and a motion by Chairman Passmore. Any discussion?
I just would ask for a roll call.
We will, definitely. Okay?
I have a point. I
Yes.
mean, we literally have the full council here.
Except Mr. Glover.
Okay, that would be one vote, so I
Right.
mean, we're simply kicking the can down the road.
No, we're just moving it.
It's gotta go to council no
It's gotta
matter
go
I
to
what.
understand, but, okay.
It has
I'm
to go to
just gonna
council
vote no.
whether it's rejected
Right.
or
I understand
or
that.
passed, so, at this point. All right, we will do a roll. Any other discussion? We're gonna do a roll call.
I just want to say, I hear some of the concerns. I want to hear more about those, but I'm liking what I'm hearing so far, and I think we can find a way if they're willing to work with everybody.
I would like to let the applicant know that, I encouraged all the council members to look at the meeting, and I know several of them did. And I also encouraged them to, look at this very carefully, because it is complex. And they're probably gonna have more questions for staff, no matter what happens right now.
If I could just make a statement to Mr. Bartholomew, I understand what you're saying, it does look good, but if I was to bring this up on Sea Island Parkway, we'd have had a lot of mad people in here 30 minutes ago,
Or in Bluffton.
or in Bluffton.
Can I ask you a question? At the planning commission, so I listened to both of them. Did you propose the 20% affordable housing during that, and I missed it?
No, ma'am.
So that's a new throw-in
It's-
piece from
Yes,
last Thursday?
It is, it's new. Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I didn't miss it.
And to the point about staff, I mean, we will meet with staff, and I think part of getting it to council is obviously we have to be prepared and we have to give specifics at first reading, because that's obviously a big vote. So that's where I think we work with Vice Chair McKellen and on some of those details so that we can get the details that might, be helpful.
Okay, so motion's been made, the second, we're gonna have a roll call vote. And to vote in the positive means we'll move it up to full council for first reading.
Chairman Passman?
Yes.
Councilmember Bartholomew?
Yes.
Councilmember Tabernick?
No.
Councilmember Reeds?
No?
Councilmember Lawson?
Mark Lawson, yes, to move it to full council.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes, to move it to full council.
Councilmember Dawson?
No.
Councilmember Cunningham?
No.
Councilmember Brown? No. Vice Chair McKellen?
Yes.
It's 5-5. Motion fails.
So
That
what,
still
so
moves on to council.
Oh, okay.
it still moves to is that right? With no recommendation, okay.
No recommendation to deny.
Recommendation.
Not
Right.
no recommendation to deny.
It fails, correct, but it moves forward. Okay, well, thank you, we appreciate it. All right, next on the agenda is recommend approval of an ordinance changes to Chapter 38, Article 2, Trash and Litter Control of the Beaufort County Code of Ordinances. There's no impact on finances. It's just.
Ma'am, hello again. So this is a housekeeping item. In August, Mr. Desai came forward and offered amendments to Chapter 62, Solid Waste. This is to backfill that and make sure that the trash and litter portions in Chapter 38, Article 2 match what was done and to do the same updates as far as terms, definitions, scope, procedures of enforcement, and update penalties under South Carolina Code of Laws matches the two ordinances. That's what we're doing with this.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
And have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, motion made by Councilman Cunningham and seconded by Councilman Tabernick. Without objection, this will.
I have a question.
You have a discussion? Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I always love to read these because I learn new things, whatever protrusible waste is and rank vegetation. But here's my question, it's a big, long thing. How do we notify residents of these changes and the fact that we are increasing the fine? Could go up to $500. I mean, I think we gotta tell residents, how do we do that when it's so much language?
Sure, so I'll go through it as quickly as I can. Our process for enforcement is multi-layered. The first thing that we do as code enforcement employees is we notify the customer about the issue and we help them find a solution to cure it. We don't just automatically write tickets and take people to court. So the first portion of what we do in code enforcement is education and more education. So as this goes out, obviously this is a public meeting, it's out there, but individuals will be given the opportunity to cure this as part of a notification process before we cite penalties. The penalty actually is defined by South Carolina Code of Laws, and we're just making them match, because this has not been updated since 1980.
Okay.
So it's a little outdated.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I hope that answers your question.
Just real quick
Yes,
question, I'm
sir.
sorry, I know we
Oh, no.
gotta get moving. As far as code enforcement entering the property, is there a court order to do so, or when does that come into play?
No, so that falls under search and seizure laws. Typically, what we do is if we can observe it from the public way,
The plain,
Or-
plain view still.
plain view, that's right. And the way we view that, the way we're trained to do that is we can go wherever the UPS guy goes. So if there's a pathway to the front door, we can go to the front door, we can knock on the front door. We cannot peer through windows, we can't go over around fences or on the neighbor's second floor deck. All search and seizure laws apply to everything that we do under the Constitution, and we do not violate those.
That was my question, thank you.
Okay, without objection, this will go forward, all right. We have, to have a motion to go into executive session, we have two items. One is discussion of negotiations incident to proposed contractual arrangements with the, regarding the Beaufort Jasper Economic Opportunity Commission, and the other is discussion of negotiations incident to the proposed contractual arrangements for Defusky Island ferry service, and there probably will be matters arising out of executive session, I think.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Cunningham and second by Councilman Bartholomew. All in favor? Aye. We will adjourn to executive session. Thank you. If everyone, please quiet. No, I didn't turn it off. Is it not working? Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh.
Sometimes say.
Why is everybody here? What's going on?
I'm gonna give it to you. I understand. I understand.
We are back in session from Community Services and Land Use Committee. There are matters arising out of Executive Committee. I will entertain a motion regarding Defusky Island Ferry.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to move the discussion on the payments for the Defusky Island Ferry that were made in executive session forward to county council.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lawson. Councilman Lawson, with any discussion? Okay. With no discussion and without any disagreement, we
There
will
is
go
one
for it.
objection. I object.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll take a roll call vote.
No,
No, you don't need to take a roll call.
Just one objection.
One
Okay,
objection.
one objection. That is so noted by Councilman Cunningham. All right, it will go forward to full council. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
5:05.
I need the agenda.
When do you want to come back?
It'll probably take us 5 minutes to change over everything.